after that it would be considered late, and it'll deduct late credit. Today we're just going to wrap up this section, so we just have a little bit left. This first question that we're ready for on our notes handout is really what we were doing on Friday. So without graphing, so you don't have to graph on this one. I want to know the vertex and axis of symmetry of this parabola. And I also want to know, is it going to open up or down? How can you tell that stuff by looking at the equation? How do you know if it opens up or down? The negative. If it's positive, it's just a regular parabola, so it opens up. This one's a negative, so it would open down. I didn't ask this, but would it have a maximum or a minimum? Maximum. If it's an upside down parabola, that vertex is your high point, it's your maximum. Okay, how do we find our vertex?
Opposite of B over 2A.
Good. What's our B value?
6.
And that is -3, so we get -6 over -6, which is 1. So that is the x value of the vertex. The vertex is an ordered pair, so how do we get the y? So if you plug a 1 in, you get -3 plus 6 plus 1, which is 4. So our vertex is 1, 4. Then what's the axis of symmetry?
Change all the x's to zeros.
That's the y-intercept.
Oh.
So 1.
Remember, it's the vertical line that goes through the vertex, so you always have to write it as x equals, and it's just your x value, x equals 1. Okay, take a second and do B and C for me. So first one, does it open up or down?
Open up.
So it would have a maximum or minimum?
Minimum.
Okay. Your vertex opposite of B would be 8 over 2 times A. So the x value is 1. If you plug a 1 in, you get 3. So vertex is 1, 3, and then the axis of symmetry?
X equals 7.
What?
X equals just the x value. Your y-intercept is 7. All right, see, this one opens down, so it has a maximum. Vertex opposite of B, so that'd be positive 4 over 2 times A. So you get 4 over -16, so negative 1/4 for the x value. Plug that in to get your y. So negative 1/4 squared would be 1/16 times negative A is negative 1/2 plus 1 minus 10. So negative 19 over 2. Did you, maybe, I don't think you added your 1. You guys double check me and plug that in. Negative 1 plus 1 minus 10. Yeah. What's the axis then? X equals negative 1/4. Make sure that vertex is always written as an ordered pair and the axis is always written as a vertical line. X equals a number. All right, is that one okay? So this is the type of stuff that was on that Math Excel. There was one question on Math Excel that we talked about Friday that it was like, I don't know, 6 parts or something and only gave you 1 point. When I moved your grades into the grade book, I am adjusting that one and making it 1 point per part. So just realize I can't change it on the Math Excel since you guys have already started it, but I am adjusting the grades when I move it over into this. So the last thing I want to talk about, really the only new thing, is a quadratic model. This is just looking at some word problems where we might have quadratics come in. And we're not going to talk a whole lot about this yet. We're just going to build onto it and we'll add a little bit as we go through this chapter. But we've been talking about, if I ask you to find the maximum or minimum, that is the vertex. So if you're filling in your notes sheet, there are some things you can put in here. The height of an object can be measured by this equation. I'm not going to make you memorize that equation, but it is one that we use a lot. It actually comes from physics. So S of t is representing the height. T is the time in seconds. V sub 0 is your initial velocity, or velocity at time 0. And H sub 0 is your beginning height, or height at time 0. We have that stuff down. I just want to look at one problem along these lines. So a ball is thrown directly upward from an initial height of 75 feet with an initial velocity of 112 feet per second. So we're talking about this formula that we just wrote down. So part A, I want the function that I would use to describe this height. So t is the variable, that's not going to change. But v sub 0, what is the initial velocity here? And what is h sub 0, the beginning height? So first thing we have to do is just plug in the beginning height and velocity. If you started on the ground, what would your height be? 0. If you're on the ground, good. All right, part B. After how many seconds does the projectile reach its maximum? How do we find the maximum here? If I want the maximum, another word for that is vertex. So we just have to do the opposite of B over 2A. Estimated 112 over 2 times negative 16. And we get 3.5 seconds. So it takes 3.5 seconds to get to your highest point. Second part, what is that maximum height? So what do we have to do? Plug that 3.5 back in. So negative 16 times 3.5 squared plus 112 times 3.5 plus 75. And we get 271 feet. I am actually going to skip part C. I don't want to do that one. I'm going to go to part D though. After how many seconds will the ball hit the ground? If it hits the ground, what does that mean? So the height would be 0. All right. Normally we would try factoring box method. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you it's not going to work on this one. So what other options do we have? If we had any, we would combine them, but we don't because we have a t squared and t enhanced. We can actually use our calculator to help with this. So in the next section, we're going to be talking a lot more about how to solve these types of things. I just wanted to show you, take a chance to show you some tricks on your calculator that can be helpful on ACT or something like that to save you some time. So what I want to do is graph this. So I'm going to go to my y equals. And I'm going 16, instead of t, you have to use the x button. So x squared plus 112x plus 75. Okay. So if I just look at this, I'm not seeing my full parabola because I'm just looking on my regular window, negative 10 to 10. If you look back in part B, what did we find the maximum height was? 271. So if you really want to see that full parabola, you would have to change your y's to go up to 371, which we certainly can. But do I care about that part? No, I want to know where it hits the ground. So I want to know where the height is, 0. So there's two places, right here, but can time be negative? No. And so right here, so that's the one we need. So talking about how to get that exactly, there are two different options. The first one, if you hit second, and then this trace button, this takes us into the calculate menu. This is everything your calculator can find for you exactly. So if we're trying to find when that hits the x-axis, what do you think that would be? The 0, number 2. Okay, now it's going to ask me questions. Because this parabola really keeps going forever. So your calculator can't search everything. You have to tell it start here and stop here. So I'm looking for this point over here. So my left bound, we just need to get somewhere before that point. So I'm going to use my arrow. I don't even see my cursor yet. Until we get somewhere in that vicinity. Hopefully my cursor pops up. Alright, here's my cursor. So that's to the left, that's before my point. Okay, you don't have to be there exactly, you just have to be somewhere before that x-intercept. So I want to tell my calculator, start looking here. So we hit enter. And now your calculator says right bound. It's saying, okay, I'm going to start here. When can I stop? So you just have to go past your point. So just hit the arrow. We went past it. I look here. It tells me my y's went negative. So hit enter. And then it asks you for a guess. You're close enough. Just hit enter again. And so it tells me my 0 is 7.6155. So at about 7.62 seconds. There are other ways we could have gotten this by hand, which we will get to. If you remember Algebra 2, you could have done like quadratic formula or something. You might have been able, not on this one, but some of them we might be able to factor and solve. But I wanted to show you how to use that calculator to find one, just so you have that tool in the future. Did everybody get it to work? So the handout on Classroom, there's 5 questions. They have multiple parts. It's all about, the first 4 are all graphing. So we were doing that Friday. I just broke down into an ABCD. The first 2 are questions where you would find your vertex, axis symmetry, all of that to graph it. The second questions 3 and 4, you can do it that way, but these are set up where you might be able to do transformations as well. So whichever option worked the best for you. If, like number 4, if you did not want to use transformations to graph that one, then I would recommend multiplying it out, and then you can do your opposite of B over 2A and things to get your vertex. So you've got quite a bit of time right now to work, ask me questions, finish your Math Excel